Picture this. It's November 26, 1922, in the scorching heat of Egypt's Valley of the Kings. A British archaeologist peers through a small hole in an ancient doorway, holding nothing but a flickering candle. When asked what he can see, his response would echo through history. Yes, wonderful things. But what Howard Carter discovered that day wasn't just wonderful, it was cursed. Within months, his wealthy patron, Lord Carnarvon, would be dead. The lights of Cairo would mysteriously flicker out as he drew his final breath. His beloved dog would howl and die at the exact same moment, thousands of miles away in England. And this was just the beginning of what newspapers around the world would sensationally call the curse of the pharaohs. But here's what's absolutely mind-blowing about this story. Modern science has finally cracked the code behind Tutankhamun's curse. And the truth is far more terrifying than any supernatural explanation you could imagine. We're talking about ancient biological weapons, deadly fungi that lay dormant for over 3,000 years, and a medical mystery that's literally rewriting the rules of modern medicine. By the end of this video, I'm going to reveal the shocking scientific breakthrough that transformed the very thing that killed Lord Carnarvon into a potential cure for cancer. But first, let me take you back to where it all began, with a boy who became pharaoh at just 8 years old and died in circumstances so mysterious that we're still trying to solve them today. This is the story of Tutankhamun, the lost pharaoh whose tomb would become the most significant archaeological discovery in human history, and whose curse would challenge everything we thought we knew about life, death, and the invisible dangers lurking in the ancient world. Now, before we dive into the curse that terrified the world, we need to understand who Tutankhamun really was. Because this wasn't just any pharaoh, this was a boy thrust into unimaginable power during one of the most turbulent periods in ancient Egyptian history. Tutankhamun wasn't even supposed to be pharaoh. Born around 1341 BC as Tutankhaten, meaning living image of Aten, he was the son of one of history's most controversial rulers, Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who tried to revolutionize Egyptian religion by worshipping a single god, the sun disk Aten. But here's where the story gets really dark. Tutankhamun's mother was also his father's sister. Yes, you heard that right. Royal inbreeding was common in ancient Egypt, but the consequences for this young boy would be devastating. When Akhenaten died, the royal succession was thrown into chaos. The boy who would become Tutankhamun was just 8 or 9 years old when he was thrust onto the throne of the most powerful empire in the ancient world. Imagine being a child and suddenly having to rule over millions of people, command vast armies, and make decisions that would affect the entire known world. But here's what makes his story even more tragic. This kid was physically falling apart. Modern medical analysis has revealed that Tutankhamun suffered from a crippling bone disease in his clubbed left foot. He's the only pharaoh in Egyptian art ever depicted sitting down while doing activities like archery activities that other pharaohs performed standing up as symbols of their strength and divine power. The young pharaoh was tall but frail, walking with a cane. In fact, archaeologists found 130 walking sticks buried with him in his tomb. His body was a roadmap of genetic disasters caused by generations of royal inbreeding. DNA tests have confirmed that his parents were brother and sister, and later, following royal tradition, he married his own half-sister, Ankhesenamun. Now, during his 9-year reign, Tutankhamun was guided by 2 powerful advisors who essentially ran the kingdom while he struggled with his failing health. There was the Grand Vizier, and Horemheb, the commander-in-chief of the military. These men had their own agendas, and some historians believe they may have been plotting against the young pharaoh. Under their influence, Tutankhamun made one of the most significant religious reversals in Egyptian history. He changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun, meaning living image of Amun, and restored the traditional Egyptian polytheistic religion that his father had tried to destroy. Temples were rebuilt, priests were reinstated, and the old gods were welcomed back. But then, at just 18 or 19 years old, Tutankhamun died suddenly and mysteriously. The circumstances of his death remain one of archaeology's greatest unsolved puzzles. Was it murder, disease, an accident? Modern technology has given us clues, but the truth is still hotly debated among experts. What we do know is that his death was so unexpected that there wasn't even a proper pharaoh's tomb prepared for him. Instead, he was hastily buried in what appears to have been a tomb originally intended for a lesser noble. The tomb was tiny by pharaoh standards, just 4 small chambers compared to the elaborate underground complexes built for other New Kingdom rulers. And here's where the story takes an incredible turn. Tutankhamun's obscurity in life became his greatest gift to posterity. While the tombs of more famous pharaohs like Ramesses II were looted by grave robbers centuries ago, Tutankhamun's small, forgotten tomb remained hidden and virtually intact for over 3,000 years. Fast forward to 1922. After World War I, the world was hungry for wonder, for discovery, for something to capture the imagination and distract from the horrors of the recent conflict. Enter Howard Carter, a British archaeologist who had been searching the Valley of the Kings for years with funding from the wealthy Lord Carnarvon. Carnarvon was getting impatient. After years of fruitless digging and mounting expenses, he had agreed to fund just one more season of excavation. Carter's team had been systematically clearing the valley, moving tens of thousands of tons of debris left by previous excavators. They used borrowed railway tracks with hand-pushed trucks, while local workers used picks and hoes to fill thousands of baskets each day. The breakthrough came in the most mundane way possible. On November 4th, 1922, a water boy carrying supplies for the dig stumbled over a stone. That stone turned out to be the first step of a staircase that had been hidden for over 3 millennia. As Carter's team carefully excavated the stairway, excitement built to a fever pitch. When they finally cleared all 16 steps, they discovered a plastered doorway stamped with the cartouche, the royal seal of Tutankhamun. But here's what made Carter's blood run cold. The doorway showed clear signs of having been broken into and resealed twice in ancient times. Ancient tomb robbers had found the burial within years, maybe even months, of Tutankhamun's death. Had they stripped it bare like so many other royal tombs, Carter spent a sleepless night wondering if they had discovered an empty vault. On November 26, 1922, Carter made a small hole in the upper left corner of the doorway and peered inside with a candle. What he saw in that flickering light would change archaeology forever. The tomb wasn't empty. It was packed floor to ceiling with the most spectacular collection of ancient artifacts ever discovered. Golden chariots gleamed in the candlelight. Elaborate furniture, jewelry, weapons, and ceremonial objects filled the antechamber. And this was just the first room. Behind another sealed doorway lay the burial chamber itself, containing treasures beyond imagination. Nested golden shrines, a massive stone sarcophagus, and ultimately 3 golden coffins containing the mummy of the boy pharaoh himself. But the greatest treasure of all was Tutankhamun's solid gold funeral mask, 10 kilograms of pure gold inlaid with lapis, lazuli, quartz, and obsidian, depicting the young pharaoh's serene face for eternity. It would become the most recognizable artifact from the ancient world. The discovery made headlines across the globe. This wasn't just archaeology, this was the adventure story the world had been waiting for. Newspapers couldn't get enough of the mysterious boy king and his fabulous treasures. But then something happened that would transform a remarkable archaeological discovery into a supernatural legend that persists to this day. Lord Carnarvon, the man who had funded the expedition and shared in its greatest triumph, was about to become the curse's first victim. On March 19, 1923, just 4 months after peering into Tutankhamun's tomb, Lord Carnarvon was relaxing at the Continental Hotel in Cairo when something as simple as a mosquito bite changed everything. He absent-mindedly scratched at the bite on his cheek, then made a fatal mistake. While shaving the next morning, he accidentally cut right through the infected bite with his razor. What happened next reads like something out of a horror novel. The small cut became inflamed, then infected. Within days, Carnarvon was burning with fever as the infection spread through his bloodstream. His doctors diagnosed facial erysipelas, a severe streptococcal infection that was rapidly turning into blood poisoning. But here's what makes this story absolutely chilling. Carnarvon had been living on borrowed time for 20 years. Back in 1903, He'd suffered a near-fatal car accident in Germany that left him with severely damaged lungs and a compromised immune system. His doctors had warned that any serious respiratory infection could kill him. As Carnarvon lay dying in his hotel room, something extraordinary happened. At the exact moment he drew his final breath on April 5th, 1923, every light in Cairo mysteriously flickered and went out. The entire city was plunged into darkness for several minutes before power was restored. Egyptian officials could never explain the blackout, but the strangeness didn't end there. At that same moment, over 2,000 miles away at Carnarvon's estate in England, his beloved fox terrier began howling uncontrollably before collapsing and dying. The dog had been perfectly healthy, yet somehow died at the precise instant its master passed away in Cairo. When news of these bizarre coincidences hit the press, the world went absolutely mad. Here was a story that had everything: ancient treasure, mysterious death, and supernatural occurrences that defied rational explanation. The phrase "Curse of the Pharaohs" exploded across newspaper headlines worldwide. The timing couldn't have been more perfect for creating a media sensation. Lord Carnarvon had granted exclusive coverage rights to the London Times, shutting out every other newspaper and journalist from the biggest archaeological story of the century. Desperate for their own angle, competing newspapers seized on the cursed narrative with both hands. Enter Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes and one of Britain's most respected authors. Doyle declared himself a true believer in the curse and theorized that ancient Egyptian priests had either applied poison before sealing the tomb, or that opening the sarcophagus had released vengeful spirits responsible for Carnarvon's death. The public ate it up. Here was the world's most famous detective story writer, lending credibility to the supernatural explanation. Books, films, and radio programs about the curse proliferated, each adding new layers to the growing mythology. But here's what's absolutely fascinating. While the world was gripped by curse fever, Howard Carter himself remained completely skeptical. The man who had actually discovered the tomb and spent more time inside it than anyone else dismissed the curse as tommyrot and rubbish. Carter had good reason to be skeptical. Of the 25 Westerners who first entered Tutankhamun's tomb, Lord Carnarvon was the only one to become seriously ill or die soon after its opening. If there really was a supernatural curse targeting tomb intruders, why was everyone else perfectly fine? Carter himself worked inside the tomb for years, carefully cataloging and removing over 5,000 artifacts. The process took his team a full decade to complete. If anyone should have been cursed, it was Carter. Yet he lived until 1939, dying of natural causes at age 64, 17 years after entering the tomb. The statistical reality was clear. There was no curse. But statistics don't sell newspapers or capture imaginations the way supernatural mysteries do. The curse narrative became so embedded in popular culture that it overshadowed the incredible archaeological significance of the discovery itself. Meanwhile, Carter and his team continued their painstaking work inside the tomb. What they found there was nothing short of miraculous. The burial chamber contained layer upon layer of nested golden shrines, each more elaborate than the last. Inside the final shrine was a massive quartzite sarcophagus, its lid cracked from the weight of the stone. When they lifted that lid, they discovered 3 coffins nested inside each other like Russian dolls. The outer 2 were made of gilded wood, but the innermost coffin was solid gold, over 200 pounds of pure gold, crafted into the shape of the young pharaoh. But the real shock came when they finally unwrapped Tutankhamun's mummy. This wasn't the perfectly preserved body they expected. The mummy was in terrible condition, literally cooked inside its wrappings. The embalming oils had chemically reacted with oxygen over the millennia, generating temperatures over 400 degrees Fahrenheit and essentially roasting the pharaoh's remains. Modern forensic analysis revealed even more disturbing details about the young king's final moment. X-rays showed a fractured skull and a broken leg. DNA testing confirmed the royal family's history of inbreeding and revealed that Tutankhamun had suffered from malaria, bone disorders, and a club foot that would have made walking extremely painful. The evidence painted a picture of a physically frail teenager whose death might have been sudden and violent. Was it murder? An accident? the mystery deepened when scientists discovered that his heart was missing from his mummy, unusual even by ancient Egyptian embalming standards. But while the world remained fascinated by questions of curses and murder, real scientists were beginning to investigate a far more terrifying possibility. What if there was something genuinely dangerous lurking inside that tomb, not supernatural, but biological? The answer would come from an unexpected source: other ancient tombs, other mysterious deaths, and a growing understanding of microscopic killers that had been waiting in the darkness for thousands of years. In the 1970 seconds, Polish archaeologists opened the 600-year-old tomb of King Casimir IV. Within weeks, 10 of the 12 scientists who had entered the burial chamber were dead. The cause? A deadly fungus called Aspergillus flavus that had been dormant inside the sealed tomb for centuries. Suddenly, Lord Carnarvon's death took on a completely different meaning. What if the curse wasn't supernatural at all, but rather the world's oldest biological weapon? The implications were staggering. Here was scientific evidence that ancient tombs could harbor microscopic assassins, deadly organisms that had evolved in isolation for centuries, becoming more virulent with each passing year. And Lord Carnarvon, with his damaged lungs from that 1903 car accident, would have been the perfect victim. Dr. Jennifer Wegner from the University of Pennsylvania began investigating what she called tomb toxicity syndrome. Her research revealed something that would have horrified Howard Carter if he'd known. Sealed ancient tombs are like biological time bombs containing concentrated cocktails of deadly pathogens that modern immune systems have never encountered. When archaeologists break those seals, they're not just letting in fresh air, they're releasing microscopic predators that have been waiting in the darkness for millennia. Aspergillus flavus, the same fungus that killed those Polish scientists, produces toxins so potent that they can trigger fatal lung infections months after initial exposure. But here's the truly chilling part. These ancient fungi don't just kill quickly. They can lie dormant in your lungs for months, slowly building their strength before launching a devastating attack. Lord Carnarvon was symptom-free for 5 months after entering Tutankhamun's tomb. Then came the nasal inflammation, the eye problems, and finally the catastrophic respiratory failure that matched perfectly with invasive Aspergillus poisoning. The mosquito bite that supposedly started his infection? That may have been just the trigger that activated the fungus already growing in his compromised lungs. His immune system, already weakened by decades of respiratory problems, simply couldn't fight off this ancient biological weapon. Laboratory studies have since confirmed the presence of these deadly organisms in Egyptian tombs. Scientists wearing full hazmat suits have detected Aspergillus niger, Aspergillus flavus, and other toxic molds growing inside sealed sarcophagi. But the dangers don't stop there. These tombs also contain ammonia, gas, formaldehyde, and hydrogen sulfide, a chemical cocktail that can cause symptoms identical to pneumonia. Even more terrifying, bats that roost in excavated tombs carry fungus in their droppings that causes histoplasmosis, a respiratory disease that mimics influenza but can prove fatal to people with weakened immune systems. The Valley of the Kings, where Carter made his discovery, is home to millions of these bats. Dr. Wegner's team made another shocking discovery when they analyzed the air inside sealed Egyptian coffins. The concentration of toxic gases was so high that just a few deep breaths could cause severe respiratory distress. Imagine Howard Carter peering into that tomb with his face pressed close to the opening, inhaling thousands of years' worth of accumulated biological hazards. The scientific evidence was mounting, but the story was about to take an even more incredible turn. Researchers at major universities began studying these ancient fungi not as killers, but as potential healers, because sometimes the most deadly organisms in nature also hold the keys to saving lives. Dr. Sarah Labais at the University of Tennessee was among the first to realize the medical potential hidden inside these ancient tombs. Her team began collecting samples of Aspergillus flavus and other tomb fungi, not to destroy them, but to unlock their secrets. What they discovered would revolutionize cancer research. The same toxic compounds that killed Lord Carnarvon were producing molecules with extraordinary anti-cancer properties. These fungi had spent thousands of years in isolation, evolving unique chemical weapons to survive in the harsh environment of sealed tombs. Those same weapons could now be turned against human diseases. The breakthrough came when researchers identified ribosomally synthesized and post-translationally modified peptides, RIPs, produced by the ancient fungi. These complex molecules had structures unlike anything found in modern organisms, and early tests showed they could effectively target and destroy cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue unharmed. It was poetic justice on a cosmic scale. The organism that had terrorized the world as the Pharaoh's curse was now being harnessed to fight one of humanity's greatest enemies. Scientists were literally transforming death into life, curse into cure, using the very same biological mechanisms that had claimed Lord Carnarvon nearly a century earlier. But the tomb's mysteries were far from solved. In 2015, archaeologist Nicholas Reeves dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Using high-resolution scans of Tutankhamun's burial chamber, he claimed to have detected hidden doorways behind the painted walls, doorways that might lead to additional chambers. And not just any chambers. Reeves theorized that these hidden rooms might contain the lost burial of Queen Nefertiti, one of ancient Egypt's most powerful and mysterious rulers. Tutankhamun's tomb might be just he was right. Tut the antechamber to an even greater discovery. The implications were staggering. Nefertiti had vanished from historical records during the chaos following Akhenaten's death. Some scholars believed she had ruled Egypt under a different name before Tutankhamun took the throne. If her mummy was hidden behind those walls, it could rewrite everything we know about ancient Egypt's most turbulent period. Ground-penetrating radar detected what appeared to be hollow spaces behind the tomb's north wall. The excitement was palpable. Here was the possibility of another archaeological discovery that could dwarf even Carter's incredible find. But when deeper scans were conducted, the results were inconclusive. The mystery deepened rather than resolved. Meanwhile, forensic experts were still trying to solve the riddle of how Tutankhamun died. New CT scans revealed fractures in his skull and ribs that hadn't been caused by the mummification process. His sternum was missing entirely, and there were signs of massive trauma to his torso. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities, assembled an international team of forensic specialists to conduct a virtual autopsy of the boy king. Using the latest medical imaging technology, they peered inside the mummy without unwrapping it, searching for clues that had been missed for nearly a century. What they found was disturbing. Tutankhamun's body showed signs of having been dismembered and hastily reassembled during mummification, highly unusual for a pharaoh's burial. His heart was missing, replaced with a scarab amulet. Several ribs had been removed entirely. The evidence suggested either a catastrophic accident or deliberate violence. Some forensic experts theorized that Tutankhamun had been crushed by a chariot or trampled by horses. Others pointed to the missing heart as evidence of ritual murder in ancient Egyptian beliefs. Removing the heart would prevent the deceased from defending themselves in the afterlife. But perhaps the most chilling theory Tutankhamun's death came from examining the timeline of events after his widow, Ankhesenamun, had written desperate letters to the king of the Hittites, Egypt's greatest enemies, begging him to send one of his sons to marry her. In the letters, she claimed to be afraid and alone, with no male heir to protect her. The Hittite king eventually sent his son, but the prince was murdered at the Egyptian border before he could reach Ankhesenamun. Soon after, the young queen disappeared from historical records entirely. Her body has never been found. Meanwhile, Tutankhamun's elderly advisor, married Ankhesenamun and claimed the throne. Within 4 years, he too was dead, and Horemheb, the military commander, seized power and systematically erased both Tutankhamun and from official records. The pattern was clear. Everyone connected to Tutankhamun's death had either died mysteriously or gained power from it. Was this ancient Egypt's greatest unsolved murder case? The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. As modern technology continues to probe the tomb's secrets, new mysteries emerge faster than old ones are solved. In 2019, scientists discovered that some of the iron artifacts buried with Tutankhamun were made from meteoric metal, literally forged from stars that fell from heaven. To the ancient Egyptians, these objects would have been gifts from the gods themselves. But to modern archaeologists, they represent technology that shouldn't have existed in the Bronze Age. How did Egyptian metalworkers acquire the knowledge to work with meteoric iron over 3,000 years ago? The deeper researchers dig into Tutankhamun's story, the more questions arise. Why was his tomb so small for a pharaoh? Why were the wall paintings completed so hastily that the paint was still wet when the tomb was sealed? Why did the ancient tomb robbers break in twice but apparently steal so little? Even the famous golden mask holds secrets. Recent analysis revealed that it was originally made for someone else, possibly a woman, given the style of the earrings and the delicate features. Had Tutankhamun's burial equipment been hastily repurposed from another royal burial? If so, whose? Some Egyptologists now believe that Tutankhamun's death was so unexpected that his burial had to be improvised using whatever royal burial equipment was available. The small tomb, the repurposed mask, the hasty wall paintings, all evidence of a funeral arranged in desperate haste. But why the rush? Was someone trying to hide evidence of murder? Or was Egypt facing external threats that made a quick burial necessary? The boy king's mummy offers tantalizing clues but no definitive answers. What we do know is that Tutankhamun's curse has evolved far beyond its supernatural origins. Modern science has transformed the deadly fungi in his tomb into potential cancer treatments. The mysterious circumstances of his death continue to challenge forensic experts, and the possibility of hidden chambers keeps archaeologists dreaming of even greater discoveries. The curse that began with Lord Carnarvon's death has become something far more complex and fascinating than anyone could have imagined. It's a story that bridges the ancient and modern worlds, connecting Bronze Age mysteries with cutting-edge medical research, supernatural legends with hard science, and perhaps that's the real magic of Tutankhamun's story. Nearly a century after Howard Carter first peered into that tomb, the boy pharaoh continues to surprise us, challenge us, and remind us that the past still holds secrets that could change our future. The curse may have been debunked, but the mystery remains as compelling as ever, because sometimes the truth is far more extraordinary than any legend we could invent. But as we stand on the brink of potentially revolutionary medical breakthroughs derived from ancient tomb fungi, there's still one piece of this puzzle that refuses to fall into place, and it might be the most important piece of all. You see, while scientists have been busy transforming Tutankhamun's curse into cutting-edge cancer research, archaeologists have been quietly working on something that could change everything we thought we knew about this story. They've been asking a question that seems almost too incredible to believe. What if we've been looking at this completely backwards? What if Tutankhamun wasn't the main event at all, but merely the opening act? Remember those hidden chambers that Nicholas Reeves detected behind the tomb walls? Well, the story doesn't end with inconclusive radar scans. In fact, recent developments have taken this mystery into territory so mind-bending that it reads like science fiction. Dr. Mamdouh El-Demati, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities, assembled a team of international experts using the most advanced non-invasive scanning technology available. We're talking about equipment so sophisticated that it can detect organic materials through solid rock, map air pockets with millimeter precision, and even identify different types of metal objects without disturbing a single grain of sand. What they found behind those walls defied every assumption about ancient Egyptian burial practices. The scans revealed not just empty chambers, but chambers that appear to contain organic materials consistent with mummified remains. And here's where it gets absolutely wild. The density readings suggest these aren't ordinary mummies, but bodies that were preserved using techniques far more advanced than anything we've seen from Tutankhamun's era. But wait, it gets even stranger. Ground-penetrating radar has detected what appears to be a vast network of passages, extending far beyond Tutankhamun's small tomb. These aren't natural cave formations or ancient mining tunnels. They're precisely carved corridors that seem to connect multiple burial chambers in a complex that could span hundreds of meters beneath the Valley of the Kings. If this is true, then everything we thought we knew about ancient Egyptian royal burials is wrong. We're not talking about isolated tombs scattered throughout the valley, but an interconnected underground necropolis that would make Tutankhamun's tomb look like a small storage closet. Dr. Sarah Parkak, The space archaeologist who uses satellite imagery to uncover hidden ancient sites has been working with thermal imaging technology to map heat signatures beneath the valley floor. What she's found suggests that there are massive voids, underground spaces, large enough to contain entire burial complexes that dwarf anything we've discovered so far. And here's what's keeping archaeologists awake at night. If these hidden chambers exist, they might not have been disturbed by ancient tomb robbers. While Tutankhamun's tomb showed clear signs of ancient break-ins, these deeper chambers appear to have remained completely sealed since they were first closed over 3,000 years ago. Imagine for a moment what that means. We could be looking at the discovery of perfectly preserved royal mummies, complete burial assemblages that make Tutankhamun's treasures look modest by comparison, and historical records that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient Egypt's most mysterious period. But the Egyptian government has been incredibly cautious about proceeding with any invasive investigation. And there's good reason for that caution. The lesson of Lord Carnarvon and the Polish scientists who died after opening ancient tombs hasn't been forgotten. If these hidden chambers contain even more concentrated biological hazards than Tutankhamun's tomb, the risks could be catastrophic. Dr. Andreas Schmidt, a microbiologist specializing in extremophile organisms, has been studying what happens to fungi and bacteria when they're sealed in perfect isolation for millennia. His research suggests that these organisms don't just survive, they evolve. They become something entirely different from their original forms, potentially developing survival mechanisms that could make them incredibly dangerous to modern humans. Schmidt's team has discovered that Aspergillus strains isolated from different ancient tombs show genetic variations that suggest thousands of years of independent evolution. Each sealed tomb is essentially a biological laboratory where microscopic life forms have been conducting their own experiments in survival and adaptation. The implications are staggering. If the hidden chambers beneath Tutankhamun's tomb contain unique strains of ancient fungi, they could represent the most dangerous biological specimens on Earth. Or conversely, they might hold the keys to medical breakthroughs that could dwarf even the cancer research derived from Tutankhamun's tomb. But there's another layer to this mystery that's even more intriguing. Recent analysis of the artifacts found in Tutankhamun's tomb has revealed something that archaeologists initially dismissed as insignificant, but now recognize as potentially revolutionary. Hidden among the thousands of burial goods were several small objects that don't fit the typical pattern of pharaonic grave goods. These items, small metal cylinders, crystalline formations, and strangely shaped organic materials, were originally catalogued as decorative elements or religious amulets. But when Dr. Robert Johnson's team at MIT subjected these objects to advanced spectroscopic analysis, they discovered something extraordinary. The metal cylinders contain alloys that shouldn't exist in Bronze Age metalwork. The crystalline formations have atomic structures that don't match any known minerals from Egypt, and the organic materials appear to be plant fibers from species that went extinct thousands of years before Tutankhamun's time. Johnson's findings suggest that some of Tutankhamun's burial goods might not be Egyptian at all, but artifacts from far older civilizations that the ancient Egyptians discovered and incorporated into their own burial practices. If true, this would mean that Tutankhamun's tomb contains evidence of advanced ancient technologies that predate known Egyptian civilization by millennia. The boy pharaoh might have been buried with artifacts from the legendary lost civilization of Atlantis, or from advanced ancient cultures that we haven't even discovered yet. Each small object could represent a piece of human history that was thought to be lost forever. So here we are, a century after Howard Carter first peered into that ancient tomb, and Tutankhamun is still rewriting the rules of everything we thought we knew. The curse that terrified the world has become a beacon of hope for cancer patients. The boy, king dismissed, as a minor pharaoh might be guarding secrets that could revolutionize our understanding of human history. And somewhere beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings, hidden chambers wait with mysteries that could make Tutankhamun's golden treasures look like pocket change. The lost pharaoh's greatest magic trick wasn't avoiding grave robbers for 3,000 years. It was ensuring that every answer we find only leads to bigger questions. What do you think is really hiding in those sealed chambers? Let me know in the comments below.